balanced. Even though they're hidden, they're still balanced, which means that it's not like, oh, the runners are starting with the super weapon that just kills everything that's super hidden. You know, it's nothing like that. They're very well balanced weapons, and almost all of them get used throughout the run, and it makes the run a lot more strategic and interesting to watch. So here we go. Our runners are off, and we are here in the floating keep, which looks really nice. This is a nice looking place. Illias has a rather interesting looking V. But and Cake is actually running just default V. So if anybody is wondering what the main character of this game actually looks like, it looks like Illias' screen on the right. Cake is using some kind of weird skin that I've never seen before. But here we go. Okay, so what happened is they just accidentally released the bad guy because Ruby can make boys do whatever she wants, and that's not always necessarily conducive to a healthy living situation in the floating keep, which we now see because the floating keep is now overrun by demons. And I should talk about this game's platforming mechanics. This game has a very, very interesting platforming mechanic starting right out, which is that this game does not ask whether you are touching the ground when you want to jump. Instead, it asks if you have jumped since the last time that you made contact with the ground. And what that means is you are able to drop off of a platform and then jump, which creates, just with one basic jump, already some very interesting platforming. Now, even more interesting than that is you just saw both players do a little bit of a damage boost, where when you get hit in this game, you kind of get popped up about a foot into the air, which, because of this game's jumping mechanic, where you can drop off or somehow find yourself in the air and then still jump, you're able to use that little pop-up from the damage and jump out of it to reach just slightly higher than Solgren intended when designing these levels, which allows you to do a little bit of a skip. The one that we saw just now only skips about 10 seconds tops, but it's a skip, and you'll see pretty much everybody do it because why not? Now, both players have come into the next area of the floating keep where they have a flutter mechanic now. So the flutter is not quite a double jump, but it is something that kind of manipulates your airspeed. So it's used similarly to a double jump. It's kind of like Yoshi's, you know what I'm talking about? Like in Yoshi games, how he can jump and then he can go and kind of do like a flutter. It's basically that. So it's very interesting because it's used to get a nice bit of horizontal movement as opposed to more vertical movement. And so you'll see that used very creatively in a lot of spots here, where the player has to kind of navigate horizontally throughout some spikes, and using the flutter is better for that. And then also coming into that is also coming with that is having to figure out whether you're supposed to flutter or jump first. So you'll find certain spots where you need to flutter and then jump, and then you'll find spots where you need to jump and then flutter. CakeSauc3 getting a secret here, and I think he just died on Miyogi, or something weird happened, and he is now putting on his cat ears because I'm pretty sure that's why he died. He needs... Wait, why... I'm getting a little confused here by some of the things that Cake is doing over there. But, okay, so he's coming to Miyogi. Illias is also coming here to fight Miyogi, and this is where you'll find one of the game's lesser-used weapons used with maximum potential here, which is Sloth. So Sloth has a long wind-up and a long cooldown, so its DPS is rather poor. However, when it hits very hard. So it's perfect for this boss, who she kind of flings an attack at you with a shield up where she's invulnerable, and then after her attack, her shield is let down for a moment while she lets her guard down and just laughs at you because she's a sadistic, conniving demon girl. And so when she gives you that opportunity to hit you, bam, you hit her with Sloth, and it does 8 damage, which is more damage than any other weapon does in the game in one shot, which that's enough damage to allow you to get through that fight in only 3 phases. Now, after defeating Miyogi, the players have a new movement mechanic, which is sliding. Sliding is faster than running, so you'll see the players sliding as often as possible from this point. Whoa, Cake just went for a really sweet damage boost that now actually makes this very tricky, and he does it. All right, nice. So there's a checkpoint right there. However, hitting checkpoints actually kills all of the enemies on screen. And so if you are able to ignore that checkpoint, then you can use that conving to damage boost up and get through that room faster. But the other thing that checkpoints do is refill your health, which means if you're skipping checkpoints, you're not getting health refills, and so you're more likely to die, which means that you get sent back farther than usual because you skipped a checkpoint. So yeah, skipping checkpoints is very, very risky, but it is something that you'll see happen in a few different spots. And Cake killed Pergora so quickly that I wasn't even really able to discuss the fight, but we will have plenty of time to discuss it once Illias makes it there, because right now Cake is about to do Falling Skip. So the next section of the game after Pergora is this long flying section where there's all these missiles shooting at you, these robots come up and shoot at you, and it's really fun during a casual playthrough. It's a nice section of the game, but it's really random and not really good in a speed run, so we skip it. And the way that we skip it is, remember when I mentioned that the game doesn't check whether you're touching the ground for jumps, but it checks whether you have touched the ground since the last time you jumped? Similarly, the game doesn't give you a jump. The game gives you your current jump status each time you hit the ground. And since that is the only mid-air save in the game, it means that if you load another file that has double jump and then you come back to this file, you have not touched the ground yet, and so the game doesn't take away your double jump, which allows you to double jump over the trigger that actually locks you into that falling section of the game. Now, on top of that, Cake also... Oh! Cake's in a little bit of trouble now. He's got... Oh, is he going to still go for Electram checkpoint skip? Oh, man. Okay, so before I finish what I was talking about with Falling Skip, Cake is skipping checkpoints here, just like I was talking about earlier, because after you defeat the boss up here, you have to backtrack all the way back through the section that he's currently in order to get back to town. Which means if you skip the checkpoints, then you can just hit the Death Warp button and Death Warp back to town. He's trying to do kind of a tricky jump right there and missed it a couple times and is eating a lot of these electric orbs here. And okay, he is going to take the checkpoint to refill his health. So the tricky thing about the falling section with the skip, well, let's actually talk about Electram. So Electram is another boss in the game, and similarly to Pergora's 40% Enrage, which I haven't talked about yet because I haven't talked about Pergora yet, he goes into this long, invulnerable period where he just attacks you, and you have to figure out, you know, how to dodge his attack and not worry about dealing damage yet because he's actually invulnerable during this period. So that's his Enrage, then he'll come back and be done. Pergora, on the other hand, also enrages at 40% health, but he just has all of his attacks become more fearsome afterwards. So they both have an Enrage period, but they do it a little bit differently. And like many other things in this game, that will eventually be built upon, and we just might see a boss that does both at once. So CakeSauc3 just defeated Electram. He now gets his next feather, and this is going to give him his next move, or it's kind of it's his next ability in the game, which is the orbs. So in this game, you are now able to fire ranged orbs, which can be fired in any of the 8 directions. And just like the double jump, which they got earlier and I didn't talk about, he can now double jump on top of his flutter. Just like that, originally you think, oh my gosh, double jump, the platform is going to be so much easier now because I have double jump. And then you come to the quick realization that, hang on, that just means that the platforming is now going to require me to double jump on top of my jump after dropping off of a ledge and my flutter and knowing what order to do them in. So really, it just makes things a whole lot more complicated. Similarly, the ability to shoot orbs now is just going to make combat a lot more complicated instead of easier. And it's a wonderful little realization that you go through when you play this game blind. So Cake is now in the Terrestrial Veil, or, well, we call this the Veil 2, because you're kind of already in the Terrestrial Veil right after falling and as you go to Electram and stuff. However, this is after Electram and we're moving on to the next boss, and it's the second Veil area. And we have to talk about this part separately because of this part right here. Boom! Big damage boost. So that is a huge damage boost in the game, probably the biggest one that saves, gosh, a lot of time, maybe a minute. Probably a little less than a minute if you're really, really good at the game. But Cake actually kind of got overwhelmed by bugs there and ended up failing it, and now has hit a spike. So we get to see the damage boost once again here. Basically, you're supposed to go right here, and that goes all the way around and eventually comes back up to hit a checkpoint up on top, and then that drops down to the spot right here that he just got to, but instead he just damage boosted up to it. However, that means that he didn't hit a checkpoint on the way, which refills your health, and he had to take damage in order to boost up here, which is quite a bit. It's 35 damage from these spike bars, which means that you now have to very carefully platform through that pinwheel, through all these bugs and all that in order to nail it. So this is an interesting skip. Now, the Troll Cave skip, there's this rock-throwing wench over here on the right. It looks like he's actually just going to do the Troll Cave now. But she's throwing rocks over there, and those rocks have an interesting property where they only check for collision on walls if you are in the room. But if you're not in the room, the rock still moves, but the wall isn't there. I guess it's not that they're not checking for collision, it's that the wall just literally isn't there if you're in the room. If you're not in the room, it's one of those two things. The point is that you leave the room for the time for the rock to pass by the wall, and then you come back into the room and allow the rock to hit you to damage boost up to the top. But I don't know why I'm still talking about that, because Cake didn't do it. Now he's fighting Amethyst. The property of Amethyst is that you can only do 16 damage to her per phase. And so she, as long as she has that shield up on her, that means that Cake is doing as much damage as he could possibly be doing at that point in time. Now, her health is not a multiple of 16, though, which means that you are allowed to miss some hit points, and you won't lose an entire cycle. But, you still want, you know, it's better safe than sorry sometimes. A lot of the time, better safe than sorry means I'm going to lose some damage so that I can dodge her attacks. And sometimes better safe than sorry means I'm going to try to do all the damage so that I don't miss too much and have to do an extra cycle. So these are the things that you have to think about while you make it look easy defeating Amethyst without taking any damage. I think that was a flawless, wasn't it? No, it wasn't. Oh, he took the save. Okay. I thought that he skipped the save and went in there with 15 hit points. And Illias takes down Pergora over on the right. So now we get to see the next... next... What am I trying to say? Falling skip. Illias is now doing Falling Skip as well, and there's two different versions of Falling Skip. Yes! Now I get to circle back around to what I was talking about like 20 minutes ago, and then I got interrupted by Electram. So Illias did a different version of the skip, where if you do it just right, Cake could basically fly during this section, and he had Ruby on his back. That is a more advanced version of the same skip that skips the trigger. And the regular version is what Illias did, where you just skip the section, and then you platform through the next section as normal. But if you skip through just right, you actually keep Ruby on your back, which then allows you to keep the physics of the falling section where you can just fly, and just fly to the next checkpoint. Now, you can't fly through the entire game because for some reason, at certain barriers, the camera just refuses to follow you and you just can't leave. But you can fly just far enough to get to the checkpoint that you get to. And then that's why you have to hit reset, get Ruby off your back, and continue on your merry way. Illias now has double jump and is making their way over to Electram, while CakeSauc is moving through the Sinister Grotto, which has some excellent music, excellent graphics, excellent game design. This is just a wonderful area of the game where we get to see minecarts and we get to see lasers. If you guys don't like minecarts and lasers, oh, I don't know what you do like. I'd be curious to know. But, so basically hitting the switches, the lasers are instant death. And so when you hit the switches, it temporarily takes the lasers down. Oh, that was close! And it was actually too close. Cake actually got hit there. So Cake hit one of those he hit one of those switches way too early. And so actually ended up getting hit by the laser as it came back, which, as we see, is instant death when that happens. So, yeah, this section is all about hitting these switches to get through the lasers before they come back. It's about skipping the swag save because, you know, you don't want to waste time. And then going into the Dark Annihilator with 50% health because you don't want to take, you know, the few seconds that it takes to refill your health and get a checkpoint because it's a race, you gotta go! So, now he's on to Dark Annihilator. The deal with Dark Annihilator is that melee attacks do not damage this guy. He's too much of a boss. And so you have to hit him with ranged attacks. So you'll see Cake shooting him just all with ranged attacks, which is a good time to mention the fact that you don't have infinite orbs, and you cannot just spam orbs as fast as you can spam the button. Instead, you'll see that there are dots above V's head, and that represents how many orbs that you have, and you can stock up to 3 orbs at one time. So what that means is that if you do have 3 orbs stocked up, you're not recharging an orb. Anytime that you don't have 3 orbs, you're actively recharging one. But if you do have 3, what are you doing? And so the trick of this fight is to be constantly unloading your orbs into Dark Annihilator and never allowing yourself to be sitting around with 3 orbs, not recharging a new one. Meanwhile, you also have all this other stuff flying around the screen that you have to deal with. Cake optimally took the Darkheim watch there. You have the missiles coming in from the right, as well as the balls that he's shooting that you have to deal with. Is he going for... Oh, no, SE skip. You have to deal with all those things, but you don't want to waste your orbs on those things because you need to be unloading on the Dark Annihilator. And so you want to be hitting those things with your melee weapon in order to keep your orbs. But if you're spending too much time hitting those with your melee weapon, then you are not, then you might find yourself sitting around like a doofus with 3 orbs, not shooting them at the boss and losing damage. So in order to fight that boss optimally, you really have to be multitasking. Not as much as later, but it's a good difficulty curve. So Illias takes down Electram, and CakeSauc finds his way onto the next area of the Sinister Grotto, while Illias will now be tackling... Oh, Illias is going for Dark Annihilator before Amethyst. Now, I'm really actually glad that they're doing this, because one thing about this game is that there are 2 points in the game where you actually have a fork in the road, and you can go either way. And there's 2 major areas of the game that end in a boss fight, and you can do them in any order. At this point, you can choose to do Dark Annihilator before you do Amethyst, and you can choose to do Myogi later before you do Twin Orcs. I actually did Sinister Grotto. On my first playthrough, I did Sinister Grotto before I did Veil 2, and it really made sense because after fighting Electram, you get the orbs. And the Sinister Grotto has a heavy emphasis on orb use for shooting the switches, for fighting Dark Annihilator. It really made sense to me that you would do this area first, and I didn't question anything. Then I got the Darkheim Watch, and the Darkheim Watch allowed me to teleport to Vale 2. And I was like, oh, here I am in Vale 2, let's do it! And then I got to the end of Vale 2 within the watch, where it then blocked me off from progressing, because that's not how the watch works, and I'm pretty sure I'm not nearly the only person who did that. It was a dark time in my life, but I'm over it now. So Cake is now fighting Terravine, who he's got a few different attacks up his sleeve, and what he likes to do is use a few of the different attacks, and then he charges up a giant face laser, which will kill you in one hit. So you have to either kill him if he's at the end of his health bar, or interrupt him with a minecart. And so that's why there's those 3 minecarts on the ground, which kind of gives the boss an interesting time limit, which is similar to Dark Annihilator. One thing that didn't come up in Dark Annihilator is the fact that he's walking forward the whole time, and there actually is an ending to that room, which means if he backs you up all the way into the corner and you haven't gotten all of your damage in, then he will just squish you and kill you. Terravine, similarly, at some point you will run out of minecarts if you don't do all of the damage in the amount of time that you are allotted by Terravine. So now Cake is here in the underworld, and this is the last portal that we see. Remember portals from the floating keep that I didn't talk about? Well, here's another one. This is the hardest portal in the game. It's got these skelemen that come out that are kind of a real pain to deal with, except you can get a nice quick kill on them, which Cake did a very good job on. If you jump at just the right time and kind of manipulate them just right, you can do a lot of melee damage on them. It's normally very difficult to do melee damage to Skelemen because of the way that they move and the way that they follow you. It's just weird, and it's hard to get in range to them with greed. But on that part where they spawn, if you do it just right, it's fine. My headset just died, so I'm gonna find a USB cable here. I keep on rambling about this video game. Illias is on a very difficult checkpoint to the game, by the way. So you have to drop off, flutter over to the left, and then as you're jumping up there, you have to is Illias a controller user? I'm seeing the signs of a D-pad issue right there. I'm just saying. You have to flutter over to the left, and then while you're doing that, as you jump up to the ledge on top, you have to shoot an orb directly downward while you're also trying to make it up onto that ledge in order to hit the switch a second time. And you just barely have enough time to do it. It is just crazy. But Illias gets through and is now on their way to the next part. Meanwhile, Cake is on Craterak, which is another very fun boss in the game. Craterak's gimmick is that he is chasing you throughout this web of tunnels. And first the fight is going horizontally, but after he does a few attacks, you get some dash wings, which is a mechanic I didn't discuss. But you can kind of see what it does. You collect it, and then your next flutter turns into a quick dash, which is 8 directional, by the way. You can do that in any direction that you want, as long as it's one of the 8 directions. And so he transitions to a vertical, and then he goes back to horizontal. But whoa, the second time it goes to the left instead of to the right. So it's really, really confusing the first time that you're in it, because everything that you know is backwards, as well as some of his attacks just kind of behaving just slightly differently. Very, very, very interesting fight. Illias making their way to the Dark Annihilator now, so that's excellent. And Cake is navigating through the old underworld here. I might be crazy, but on Cake's screen, did one of those Mega Man 2 screw enemies just fly by the right side of the screen down there? That was really bizarre looking. By Mega Man 2 enemy, I mean the Craterak spawns. They look like those screws from Metal Man stage. You know what I'm talking about. So, Cake is now on another interesting part of the game where you have to you have to pick up 3 different keys in order to access the next part of the game. And the 3 different keys are down these 3 different pathways that you can take. Now, each one of them is brilliantly designed to be challenging one direction and slightly more challenging the other direction. However, we just ignore the backwards sections by not taking the checkpoints on the way to each key or at each key, and just death warping back to the key fork area. I'm bad at finishing sentences. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. All right, so now Cake is coming to the next very, very good spot. So this is great. Remember damage boosts? I don't think we've seen a damage boost in a little while, but we're about to see a juicy one. Also, Cake just barely made it through that fog gate. That was excellent. What happened there was that fog gates only appear if there are enemies on screen. And on that spot, it doesn't quite spawn the enemies fast enough to keep the fog gate up. So if you're just perfect, you can get through between enemy spawns. All right, all right, all right. So here we go. Now, here is a juicy damage boost. This is a boss that triggers when you touch a big hitbox in the middle of the screen, but Cake is going to, he's going to lure this conving all the way into the boss arena. He's not going to take the save because that would kill the conving, and then he's going to damage boost off of it, jump up into the boss, which ends up giving him a little bit of damage, but he timed his jumps just perfectly to be able to... What was I saying? I read chat for a second and it threw me off. To be able to get enough height so that after he gets hit by the boss, he's able to coast over the trigger that starts the boss and skipping an entire boss fight. So that is an insanely huge skip. Shoutouts to Phraselow, the mad scientist who discovers these things. Illias is now going for the second half of the Sinister Grotto. Now, I didn't really talk about this before, but the switches actually are kind of funny in some areas where when you shoot an orb and it hits a wall, there's this giant like blast back sprite. You know what I'm saying? That comes off of the wall, and that giant blast back actually has a active hitbox, just like the orbs do, which is able to hit switches. And so there's a lot of spots where you're actually able to shoot switches through walls with diagonal hits because of the giant blast back with the hitbox. Oh, all right, all right. So CakeSauc is now on the most difficult auto-scrolling section of the game. We call this the Hellevator, and there's just a lot to deal with here. There's brutes that you have to navigate through where you need to use your jumps and flutters just perfectly to stay out of their range long enough to not get blasted by them while also not landing on spikes. You've got the elevator going through spike sections where you need to use your jumps just properly to get enough air time to not get hit by them. You've got the bullet hell section that then leads to the orbs that are one-hit deaths, all topped off by a nice fight with 2 Skelemen. It's very difficult. And then you get to this next point, which honestly, this is one of my favorite little platforms. Like, as far as the different pages in the game, that's probably my favorite, maybe my single favorite one. In the where there's the grabby hands, and you got to get through the crumbly bits. I mean, it's so well designed. Okay, so Miyogi 2 on the left side now. This is a wonderful fight. We are fighting Miyogi a second time. However, she has spent the entire 25 minutes just about the entire 25 minutes practicing her spells because she was really mad about what happened last time. And so now she's much, much more powerful. So when you hit her, she actually gains a shield for a short amount of time that's represented by the yellow bar that ticks down. And if you hit her while her shield is up, you'll actually heal her. On top of that, if every 8 times that you deal damage to her, you stun her and knock her on the ground, which gives you an opportunity to knock her into the lava, dealing some extra damage to her. Cake got the skip on her. That's excellent. So the funny thing is that if you heal her intentionally 6 times, it lines her health up just right so that you can stun her just as she tries to enter her enrage phase, which skips her. Oh, he did the lava skip. Oh man, that's just great. So if you can line it up just right so that your stun actually knocks her out of her enrage phase, and it's particularly great for that boss because that boss's enrage phase is like a 40-second invulnerable period that wastes a ton of time, and also the fight becomes more difficult after the enrage phase. But if you stun her out of it, she forgets to enrage. You skip the entire 40-second attack, and then oh, what's gonna happen on the? Oh, he nails the password too. And then she also forgets to make the fight more difficult for the second phase, so it's a really big deal. All right. Then he also did lava skip. So after the cutscene, the lava disappears, but it's a huge waste of time to just slowly meander your way off the platform after the cutscene and wait for gravity to have to bring V up to full vertical speed. So instead, if you jump over the lava before the cutscene triggers and gain all of your vertical momentum, then you can skip the cutscene, which makes the lava go away, and you're already at full vertical speed. It saves you like 10 frames. It's just huge. And then we get down to the bottom area of the Acropolis of Anguish, which has the password input, and nailing that password under pressure, we wouldn't have said would be difficult. Wouldn't have said would be difficult before this tournament started, but that has been it's been a huge deal so far. So Cake nails that password first try, gets into the chambers, which are very awkwardly quiet until you hit a reset at some point. If the player never resets, though, then it's just awkward the entire time. Thanks, Cake. But he went pacifist skeleton routes. It's pretty tricky there. The skeletons, or skelemen, like to just charge at you every couple seconds, and if you can get them both off screen at the same time, it makes it so that all the fog gates disappear, as we've kind of seen exhibited a couple times already. That one, though, you have to navigate through this entire area, and you have to do it all with perfect timing to line it up just right so that both skelemen are off camera just at the end, which allows you to get through without having to kill them, which saves a little bit of time. So now Cake is on the Twin Orcs. The Twin Orcs is a beautiful fight. It's a beautiful dance with these two lovely orc ladies, but that wasn't fast enough for speedrunners. So instead of the dance, they just kind of hang off the sidelines and completely just beat down on the orcs while they do their whole attack that's on the platform. It's difficult to describe that quick kill because, I mean, you saw what happened, and that's about as best as I can describe it because it's just extremely difficult to pull off. But Cake does it like a pro, and now is on to the Path of Decay, which has the best track in the game, the best soundtrack, and also some of the most difficult pages as well. Like, the first time that you get through the game, like on a blind playthrough, these platforming sections are almost like puzzles, where they only give you, Solgren only gives you so many crumbly bricks in order to hit these hearts a certain amount of time. So these hearts, as you see, have a certain number of, what do you call it, like sections or chunks on them, chunks with 2 C's, and you have to hit them that many times in order to get through. But with only so many crumbly bits, then, you know, that's all the time that you have to figure out how to best utilize your crumbly bits in order to hit the heart that many times in order to progress. And on a first-time playthrough, it's very difficult. They're basically puzzles. It's great. Now he's on the climb, which is where you have to just climb up all these different crumbly platforms and make it through. Wow! He did the fight at the end, like, beautifully. That Skeleman didn't know what hit him. So So now he's on the Super Mario World inspired Bone Snake part, where you gotta ride this thing and utilize all of this. Whoa! Okay, he was just showing off a little bit there. He's just showing off. Mr. Show, anyone? Alright, so this next page, by the way, this is like... I said the one earlier was my favorite, but I think this one actually might be my favorite. The way that you have to run across the Bone Snake, hit that heart twice, get back on it, hit it again, then do this super swag thing that only Cake and Shark know how to do. Actually, there's a couple more people who know how to do it, but oh my gosh, that is so difficult to do. So now Cake has the Space Meatball, which is a new mechanic for this area of the game, where you hold in Flutter and you turn into the Space Meatball, which allows... Oh, he's skipping a checkpoint. Oh, the big Space Meatballs on this guy. All right, so you get 8-directional, just free-form flying movement while you have this, but you only have so much meatball gas. And you got... Oh, and he ran out of gas there because he actually missed the heart. And Illias over on the left is actually not doing the damage boost. Okay, or on the right, I'm sorry. So, okay. We got to talk about this because most people do the damage boost. And we always talk about just what a big deal the damage boost is. You see now on Illias' screen what that means. Illias is on the section of the game that you have to do if you don't do the damage boost. And so this is a nice showing of just how much time it saves to do that. And also now Illias is also up though with full health because of the checkpoint that they were able to take. Alright, so Cake is through the gauntlet as well as through the Space Meatball section, and he is now on the Azrael boss fight. And the boss fight, you still have the Space Meatball here, and this is the ultimate plate spinning act, besides maybe the last boss. Basically, Azrael is the queen of multitasking and all of the different things that you have to do on this fight. So, first of all, you have to damage the boss, but you can only damage her a little bit. If you deal too much damage to her at once, her shield turns red, and she becomes invulnerable for a period of time that ends up losing you time overall on the damage that you're able to do, versus just waiting for her shield to go down normally. On top of that, she shoots these shards at you that have a very weird pattern to them, and they move very slowly across the field. So they look difficult, or they look kind of easy to dodge, but because of just how long they stick around and the weird pattern that they move in, they become very difficult to dodge when you have to deal with everything else during the fight. On top of that, she summons these rings of red shards around you that have a little gap in them that they close in every time that you hit the attack button. So when those are around you, you can't attack until you get rid of those, lest you take damage. So you need to stop what you're doing, move in that direction while you hit the attack button. On top of that, she keeps lowering platforms, so you have to hit these green souls on top in order to raise the platforms back up. And on top of that, she keeps spotting portals all over the stage. And if you don't kill the portals right away, they keep growing immensely larger and eventually just engulf the entire stage. So all of these things at once you have to deal with, while again you have to maintain damage on her. So it's just this crazy multitasking nonsense that you have to deal with while you fight her. And Cake did it so fast that I couldn't even explain it all while he was doing that. So, wowza. Alright, so Cake is now getting to Jaul, the main bad guy of the game. And he is going to fight it with a weapon called Envy that I haven't had time to talk about yet. Basically, it takes a big pair of Space Meatballs to be able to fight the boss this way. Most people use the long-range weapon called Lust, but Envy, if you play your cards right, Envy does finish the boss faster, and it is better to use, but you have to be very good and do it just right. So Cake is one of the people that we'll see do that. The main mechanic of this boss, though, is that he's got this yellow bar. You know what? He's already dead. It's a hard boss, okay? It's a difficult boss. You gotta do things. You gotta hit the spikes, hit him back in his face, whatever. All right, Joel's dead. Illias, on the other hand, is fighting Amethyst over there. We talked about Amethyst. She's very difficult. And CakeSauc is now going to be getting to the main boss, the last boss of the game. Now, I said that Amethyst is a ultimate, like, plate spinning act of multitasking. Supreme Jeul is the even more increased version of that, and then add an enrage phase on top of that. So Supreme Jeul is a boss where, first of all, in the fight, Supreme Jeul is so evil that just being around him deals damage to you as a holy, sinless angel. Except for all of the 7 sins that you commit in order to have the different weapons of the game. But besides that, you're a good angel. Supreme Jeul is too evil, and you just, like, basically melt while you're around him. Like sin burn, if you want to say. Anyway, in order to mitigate that burn, you have to actually collect these health orbs that that fairy, Fiola, the green fairy, is dropping. And I gotta fly through the rest of this. Okay, Amethyst puts ice down, and that slows him down for you to deal a bunch of damage if you time it properly. He enrages at 40% health. Now his attacks are more fearsome. Ira puts up a shield every time that he does his big scream attack that kills you in one hit if you're not inside of his shield. On top of that, he's got this magic circle. If you stand in the magic circle, you take damage. On top of that, he's moving all over the stage. You always got to know where he's moving to. You see that little, like, thing that's on the left side of the screen? That means that the next time he moves, he's moving left, which means he's going to backflip now, which gives Cake time to go take that health orb. Oh, and the boss is dead. Oh, the boss is dead. Cake has done it. Cake did it. He beat the boss. He beat the difficult boss. The game is difficult. The boss is difficult. And now we get to listen to this wonderful, absolutely fantastic victory theme. As far as credits music goes, this is one of the best credit songs of any game, I think. I mean, Mario 64, Mario 3, Mario World, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, you know, these are all great games. Eve of Extinction for the PlayStation 2. All of these games have very great credits music. Wings of V is right up there with the best of them. It really makes it feel like you have accomplished something, and you have when you have beaten this game. If there's anybody watching who has never played this game before, never seen this game before, I highly recommend that you pick it up. It is just absolutely wonderful. It may look intimidating because it is just an extremely brutally difficult game, but it has a very, very nice difficulty curve to it where as long as you're patient, you will make it through. And the game will make you a lot better at video games because it's just so well designed, and it gets you to think about things in ways that other video games don't. It's a wonderful game, and I highly encourage everyone to try it out. So Illias is now on the Underworld. This is the last portal of the game, and just like the other portals, it loses health each time that you kill an enemy. And as I was saying before, this one is extra tough because you have to deal with Skeleman on it. I gotta take a drink. Oh, man. Oh, all right. Wonderful. So Illias now has the dash feathers that he got. Shoot, I actually don't know. From the feather from that portal, and the dash mechanic allows you to use an 8-directional dash using the flutter key. And so now the platforming in this area just gets super complicated, where you have to use the you have to use your double jump, you got to use your flutter, and you have to use each of these dashes. It's kind of like there's a lot of fan games where they have like little pickups that give you an extra jump. I think Celeste might do that also, but I haven't played that game yet. And Yeah, it's kind of like that. You pick up the feather, pew, you blast through, and it's great. So great game to Cake. He killed it with a 41-30 time. I mean, it is some stiff competition in this tournament because Cake and some of the other people in this tournament are just so darn good at this game that them having a relatively bad run ends up with something like under 45 minutes, which is an insane time to beat this game in the first place. So it's really, really impressive to watch them play always. I will play Celeste, Wire Guy. I plan on playing Celeste as soon as possible. I don't want to play it during this tournament, though, because I feel like it'll confuse me.
Hey, Dash.
So, oh, hey, Cake. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing excellently. I was trying to keep up with you, but I don't know. I had to breeze past a lot of mechanics. But, you know, I did my best.
Well, you do a really good job, so I'm sure you did pretty well.
How do you feel about your run?
Well, I was a bit rusty. Messed up in a few places that I felt kind of stupid about, but the rest of it went pretty well.
There was some silly stuff, but yeah, I made sure to mention, though, that the last time I saw you play in this game, you weren't playing this category. You were playing Doomed Hellspawn, which, if anybody doesn't know what that means, Hellspawn is a modifier of the game that replaces all of the game's checkpoints with health pickups so that you cannot die ever in the game. You do get 4 times the health as usual, but there's no checkpoints. You have to beat it without dying, just with 400% health. So that's insane. However, the extra health that you get is mitigated by the fact that the Doomed modifier locks you at 1 HP, so literally anything kills you in 1 hit ever. So those two together means you have to beat the game without getting hit. And so, yeah, that's what I saw you trying recently.
Yeah, Doomed Hellspawn. It's the one category that's never been finished, and it's something that I really want to see happen eventually. So I'm taking this opportunity, since I'll be playing this game a bit for a while for the tournament. I'd like to give that some attempts and see if I can, you know, just get a good crack at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if anybody ever wants me to come into their stream without a second thought, just stream Doomed Hellspawn attempts, and I will be there in a second. So, Illias is now on Craterack, which I didn't have a lot of time to explain, but I mentioned that the fight goes from horizontal to vertical to horizontal. What I didn't talk about was this rock attack. When Craterack does this rock attack, you can actually hit the rocks back at him, dealing a great amount of damage to him. The tricky thing about it, though, is that the rocks spawn above your position, which means that you have to try to stay relatively close to him, just in case he does the rock attack, so that you can get behind the rocks and have them be close enough to him to hit him. However, if he does normal attacks, it's difficult to dodge him when you're close to him. So it's a tough act.
Yeah, it's tough to balance that fight with how you approach it, because you want to play it both carefully and aggressively at the same time.
Illias is, oh, I was going to say hanging by a thread here. It looked like that was a very good attempt, but there was... they were only at 5% health, though, so any attack would have killed him there. Oh, shoot, my mom is texting me. I can't ignore it.
Yeah, I love it when that happens.
So one really tricky thing about this fight, and something that was, I'd say on my first playthrough, on a blind playthrough of this game, this fight might actually be one of the more frustrating ones, I'd say, because of platform management. When you land on the ground, you get thrown forward toward Craterack because the ground is moving, you know? Or rather, you're moving over the ground. And it can just... it can really end an attempt very, very fast if you accidentally land on the ground and end up getting thrown all around. Then by the time you get back up on the platforms, he's lunging forward again and hitting you, knocking you back onto the ground and stuff. I don't think anything in this game is like particularly frustrating, but I do recall Craterack doing that a little bit. My brother says that this song kind of sounds like the Chocobo music from Final Fantasy.
That's one I never would have associated it with.
I think it might just be like the sound font or whatever you'd call it. The sounds that are made. Wop 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 wop.
Well, it looks like we're starting to get week 2 matches all figured out here. This is going to be interesting.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
I saw a couple murmurs about that in the chat here, but I didn't look yet. Oh yeah, look at that.
I think week 2 is going to be pretty crazy.
I find it. Sorry, it's hard not to hum to this game's soundtrack. All right, so yeah, this is only week 1, and right, so we are in the Swiss portion of the seeding right now. So that makes the matches somewhat random, right? As far as Swiss goes. As far as when we get into the bracketed portion, though, one thing to say right now is it'll be a little lopsided at first. A lot of people wonder why seeding puts the top seed versus the bottom seed and that kind of stuff, and you end up with lopsided matches right away. The reason is to make the finals interesting. If the top seeds fight each other right away, that means that the closest match, or what would be expected to be one of the most exciting matches, would happen immediately, and then one of them would be eliminated or go down to the bonus bracket right away. But if they stagger them that way, that means that they'll fight each other as late as possible. I say fight, I don't know why. I always say fight with things. Like someone will be like, hey, there's a football game on today, and I'll be like, oh yeah, who's fighting who?
Yeah, I like the way it builds it up, because at the start of the tournament, usually a lot of the top contenders, they don't face each other as often. But then as the tournament gets deeper and deeper, you get more hype matches.
Exactly. And then that also allows for some nice upsets early on as well. So, you know, it seems a lot of the time people look at it and they go, oh my gosh, like why did the tournament put this person against this person right away? But it makes a lot of sense when you think of it that way. So neither of you did Essie skip. I was actually looking out for it this time. I didn't know what it was until I was informed yesterday.
Yeah, that's not one I've practiced. And I'm not so sure I will, but you know.
For swag points.
It's pretty cool, though. It is a cool skip.
I've been practicing drive-by, and just like doing it in my regular attempts for swag. What I would like to do is to be able to do underdog every single time. I think that would be fun. To just have underdog be a natural part of the run.
Yeah, underdog, well, honestly, like, some people, I think, even find underdog to be a bit easier to do, especially at the first part, because there's that little gate jump with the spikes.
Oh, and yeah.
If you go underneath that, I've seen a lot of people do that, because it's much easier to just go underneath and get in front of the minecart and get back on top than to go and do the gate jump and risk having a death.
I'm sure most people agree that the easiest way through the gate jump, though, is to just flutter. You just do a flutter and not a jump, and you'll kind of make it through just right.
Yeah, but for some reason, I've always done a jump there.
Oh. Well, you play fan games, so you're used to gate jumps.
I guess that's true.
All right, Illias makes it through. Craterack and is going to be now moving on to the second phase of the underworld. So this is the fun key grabbing part. Yeah, so this is where the you have the choice of 3 different directions to go. Now, is there technically a fastest way to take the to take these 3 keys?
So you want to do the bottom path first, because the bottom path, when you first enter the screen, you're going to go and take the save first off. And because you went and took that save, we know that the top path and the right path both have cycles that if you respawn to the save, you'll hit those cycles perfectly.
Okay.
The bottom path, there are no cycles that are dependent on you know, how fast you get there or anything. So what you want to do is initially, when you enter that room, go grab the save and go to the bottom path first, because then when you reset after grabbing each key, you'll be able to start the top and middle paths on cycle.
Mm-hmm.
If that
now,
makes sense.
Though that does make sense. However, doesn't that just mean that all you're saving is the half second that it takes to hit reset when you grab the save?
Yeah, so it's an RTA timing thing. If you're going only for in-game time, it probably doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that it's not worth doing. I'm just saying it's pretty small.
Yeah, it is small. It's just slightly more optimal to do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's nice to have 1 less death on your, you know, death counter.
That's true. All right, so did Illias get the bottom key? I'm not sure I saw.
I don't have the commentary feed quite yet, so I'm just going off of what you tell me.
Oh, sure. Let me send you the link. I didn't think about that.
Sick, thanks.
They did get the bottom key. Okay, great. And then there's the middle key. Okay, perfect. And now they're on the final key on the way to AC. It would have been weird if they didn't get the bottom key and then moved on to the middle, but I don't know. I didn't see it.
Ooh, that is one set of clothes there that you got for Illias, I've got to say.
Yeah, I like that everybody's been making these silly race outfits.
Just to make sure we're in sync, he's doing top key right now, right?
Yep. So Illias is using the Craterack accessory, though. The Craterack accessory is great. That's my accessory of choice.
It's actually not a bad one.
It looks great.
I'm not a big fan of the eyeball or the skeleton wings, but the Craterack accessory is pretty cool.
The skeleton wings, they're kind of cool. I like that they spout blood when you flutter with them. That's a neat touch. That
is definitely a neat touch. Oh no, true.
Okay, so this game's got these eyeballs. I'm told that they're like the binoculars in Celeste, and Illias accidentally activated that one and didn't have to watch the cutscene. I wonder if Illias doesn't know that you can cancel that by hitting, I think it's the attack key. I just mash both when it happens. Oh yeah! Thanks for reminding me, Ziggy. How come... Did you die to Myogi 1?
I died to Myogi 1, yeah.
And then afterward, you went into your menu and put the cat ears on.
Yep. Fo was really hoping I would do that, apparently. As well as... I mean, the cat ears, it's been a thing for me where ever since I put on the cat ears, I got a lot better at this game. So they're almost like a token of good luck. So it was kind of telling that, like, the first time I attempted the easiest boss in the game, I fall off and die. And then I put the cat ears on and everything goes well.
All right, so this checkpoint is really, really difficult that Illias is on, where you have to... First of all, this is one of those checkpoints where the first time you get good at it, or you do it well, you'll realize at some point in it that you've been doing it wrong all along. Because naturally, your instinct is to jump into this pair of dash wings, and then you have 2 dashes that lets you go up, and then you have to go left because there's a triple wing over there, which allows you to go back out, have 2 dashes to go up and collect this other dash, which then lets you dash twice. But then you need to jump. And if you jumped into that original wing, it's I want to say impossible, but a lot of things are proven to not be impossible. But it's very, very difficult to make it through without all of your jumps at that point. And then you realize, oh, I have to do everything that I just did, but I need to flutter into this first pair of dash wings. All right, and Illias gets the third key and is on their way to the chase. So after using these dash wings the whole time, this is now the ultimate test of your dashing ability.
So one thing to note, back on that top key in the previous area that he was struggling with a bit, there's actually a strat you can use where you can skip one of the wings, and you make use of the flutter dash mechanic to make it to the top, and it's the fastest way to do it, but it's also a very risky way to do it, so you won't see very many people go for it.
And I suppose that's an example of when you would jump into the first pair instead of fluttering.
I think so, yes.
Shut me up! But yeah, like I was saying, of course there would be a reason to jump into it. So, that chase section, by the way, Illias nailed it, and it's really, really tricky, that part. I remember in my blind playthrough of this game, I had to have a roll of paper towels next to me to dry my hands off every 10 attempts or so, because it's just so intense and so demanding.
It's ridiculous, especially when you're first playing this game. For me, my first playthrough of this, I was playing on an Xbox 360 controller with the joystick. Ooh. And if anybody's tried playing an Xbox 360 controller with a joystick for platformers, especially Precision, you'll probably know that it's not easy.
Yeah.
And I quickly racked up, in the course of a couple of hours of grinding that save, I racked up 1,000 deaths before I beat it the first time.
And I suppose on a 360 controller also, you can't exactly switch over to the D-pad, because that thing is just a crappy analog stick, basically.
Yeah, I had to switch to a controller because I was bad on keyboard back then.
Okay.
Especially for the bosses, and it would have saved me a lot of pain had I just switched to keyboard, at that point, but it's tough.
Yeah, my first playthrough I did on a DualShock 4, and the shape of the DualShock 4 kind of gets your palms kind of sweaty because of the way that it fits in your hand. I've just noticed that my hands kind of get a little sweatier than with other controllers. I kind of noticed that with the GameCube controller as well a long time ago. But it's a comfy controller, though. However, after my first playthrough, I switched over to keyboard and would not go back.
So Illias looks like he has a kind of a different setup for the AC skip here. I'll be curious to see how this works out.
Now, one thing I gotta point out is that Illias is sliding off of the platform on top, and I found not to... Oh, Illias is actually fighting ancient constructs. Okay. I found...
the good music hype.
Yeah. This boss has excellent music. In the blind playthrough, it's really fun because you basically know that you're doing well when the good part kicks in, Because at first you're just going to die right away a bunch of times, and you don't even really make it to that part. But then that music kicks in, and you're like, oh, this is a good one.
This was one of my favorite bosses on my first playthrough. It was just, it got me hyped up playing it. It was really enjoyable, and then so satisfying to beat.
Yeah, super difficult boss. So how this boss works, we actually get to talk about ancient constructs, that means. So, because most of the time, this boss gets skipped. So how this boss works is there are 3 statues, and each one of them has its own health bar, as you see, with the yellow. They are all linked to the boss's main health, though. When you deal damage to any one of the statues, it deals damage to the overall health. When you get one statue's health all the way down, it destroys all the things on screen, does an extra little chunk of damage to the boss's main health bar. However, then the boss begins an enrage phase, and the enrage phase depends on which statue you killed. Each one kind of has its own unique attack that it does. Once that enrage, and they're invulnerable during this time, by the way, as well. Once that enrage phase ends, the boss that you killed will remain invulnerable as it recharges its health, and will eventually come back once its health is back to recharging. So does Illias just choose not to use Gluttony here? There's one weapon in this game is called Gluttony, and its only use in this entire game is when you enrage the right side statue, it's very, very easy to dodge that attack using that weapon.
The eyeballs, they'll circle around you, and you just have to point straight up and just mash your weapon, and it'll just destroy all the eyes before they touch you. It's actually a really cool trick. We were really excited when we found it back in the day, because Gluttony got some use.
Right. It's a pretty easy weapon attack to dodge anyway, but it's fun to use Gluttony.
So one thing to note about this boss is the reason why Illias, he had a really good attempt on this first attempt here, but he got sniped at the very end. The middle enrage from the middle statue with the lasers, when it goes to the bottom middle, it used to only always sweep from right to left. And so everyone got in the habit of whenever that attack would go up, if you were anywhere in the middle, dash to the left as fast as you can. And he did that, but the thing is, Solgren patched this game, and in the latest patch, he made it so that the laser now will go in the opposite direction if you're to the right. And Illias was not expecting that, and so he actually got cut off by the laser.
Now, I'm hoping that we see a left statue in Rage soon, because I want to talk about left statue in Rage. Some people have a lot of problems with it, but I think it's the easiest one to dodge. But, I mean, can't really talk about it unless it's happening.
It's definitely one that I always find that it's easy to dodge when it's going slow, and when it goes really fast, it kind of intimidates me. Here we go.
Okay, so the deal with this is that it mirrors. So each time that it passes around, the next time that it comes around, it's just mirrored from where it was going one way. So when it's moving to the right, if you are able to dodge it by standing exactly in the middle, then when it comes back around, you just stay in the middle, and the middle will be free the entire time. Now, if you have to stand slightly to the left of the center, that means that when it comes back the other direction, you have to stand slightly to the right of the middle, and just, you know, copy paste that for wherever it happens to be. Now, if it dips directly in the middle, so the very middle would get you hit, but that's the bottom, the trough, the minimum of the curve, if you will. Illias just did the thing again with the middle. If the minimum is right in the center, that means that it's still in a way where it's symmetrical, and so each way it's going to be the same, except in that circumstance, just the torch is where you stand. Either one of the torches, and you just sit there, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of strats on this boss with just knowing where to stand at the right time, when to move. It works for both the left and the middle enrages. It's just a bit of practice getting your muscle memory down, reacting correctly to things. We'll note, though, that when you play this boss on demon mode especially, the lasers get ridiculously fast, and everything gets ridiculously fast. There's also a thing where if you enrage a particular statue, it speeds up all of that statue's behavior for the rest of the fight. So, like, even when it's not in the enrage phase, when it's just in the basic phase, when you're just damaging all the statue heads, the lasers, if you've been hitting the middle statue more and enraging it the most, the lasers will speed up for the rest of the fight.
I did not know that.
Same with the eyeball spawns, same with the little claw things that bob up and down. And so a lot of people who, if they have trouble on this boss, especially for speedruns, and they're trying to go with a doomed category or something and avoid damage, they'll pick out strategies based on which statue head's attacks and behaviors give them the most trouble, and they'll avoid enraging that statue head.
That's interesting. So, full disclosure, I shouldn't talk about this boss like I know it, because getting the flawless on this boss is the only achievement in the game I don't have. And sometimes, if I decide to just fight this boss casually, sometimes I just can't beat it. This boss is really, really hard, and it gives me more trouble than J2 most of the time.
One of the hardest achievements to get in this game, if you want to call it an achievement, there's an achievement called Picky, where to get the achievement, you have to just enrage the same statue over and over and over. So you're going to pick only the left or the middle or the right, and you're going to just, beat the crap out of that statue. And then as a result of it, just that statue head is the one that speeds up throughout the fight, and it gets really fast. But there's another thing you can do if you want to go all out and have a very challenging but fun task on your hands, is to do what we call Picky Flawless. which is where you beat this boss only enraging one statue and not get hit a single time. And it's something that only a couple of people have done. It's ridiculously hard.
And now, what's funny about that is that people used to run 100% category, which required you to do both of those achievements, which means that the fastest way to do it would be to do Picky Flawless.
And nobody ever did it during 100% runs. It was a thing where we had to pick up the Darkham Watch, which the watch lets you warp back in time to replay an area or a boss. And so for 100%, because there were 2 achievements that you had to get on this boss to progress if you wanted to finish the category, we would just expect going into this boss that we were going to have to use the watch and play this boss twice.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting here thinking, man, Picky Flawless, or Picky sounds like an easy way to do Flawless if what you're telling me about the side statues is true. Or about the speediness of the statues. Because the thing is, for me, I find the Enrage on the left side the easiest Enrage to deal with, but I find the just random Castlevania Medusa heads that it spits during the regular part of the fight to be the most difficult part.
Yes.
And so I would not... So that's like a catch-22, you know, where I don't want to Enrage it because I don't want it to get faster, but I do want to Enrage it because the Enrage attack is easy.
There's also an issue too, which you'll notice if you're watching this fight closely, everybody in the stream here, is there are 2 different colors of eyes that come off the right statue. One of those is a yellow eye, and the yellow eye will just float around, won't really hurt you or anything, but after a few seconds, it changes to the color pink, and it comes after you, and it does damage to you. There's nothing you can do to avoid it at that point unless you trigger an Enrage first. There's also pink eyes, which are closed, and if you hit one of those by accident or intentionally, it will come after you and do the same thing. And so the thing is that one thing that messes up a lot of people, especially with Picky Flawless, is if you're enraging the right statue a lot, the pink eyes are likely to just spawn almost on top of you when you're trying to damage another statue, and then you'll accidentally basically ruin your attempt. And so it becomes a strategy of, okay, do you pick your poison here? Do you want to deal with the bobbing claw things when they get going fast, or do you want to deal with, you know, the eyeballs as they spawn, or do you want to deal with the lasers, which gets ridiculously fast as they speed up by enraging it over and over? And you got to pick really carefully which statue you want to go for.
Right. About the eyes, I really do like the visual indication where it's like the yellow eyes are open, so it's like they can see you and they're gonna come for you, so you gotta kill them. But the pink eyes are closed, so they can't see you. They'll only attack you if you touch them, you know? I think that's a really neat visual cue. No, Illias, just stand on one of the torches! It just mirrors!
It's one of those things where if you're not like really experienced and comfortable with the enrage from the left statue, you can trick yourself. You can psych yourself into like moving more than you have to for that enrage.
Yep. Before you know it, you're like trying to slide between the spots, and it gets messy. You just notice the 2 side statues move from side to side. Yeah, they really subtly kind of move around. It's really neat looking. They kind of close in and open up. This is a really sweet boss. At first, I was disappointed when the skip for this boss was found because, you know, every boss in this game is so great. But at the same time, this boss would kill so many of my runs if I still had to fight it.
It's really funny, actually, the history that we've had in the speedrunning community with this boss. We've found so many ways to shorten or now outright skip the boss, where we used to do this thing where there was a glitch in the older patches where you could enrage 2 statue heads at the same time. And when you would do that, it would let you go into this phase that we would call super damage phase, where you could just it would have multiple enrages going off at the same time. And then you would do an extreme amount of damage in return, but it was almost like a it was almost a thing where you knew you were going to get hit because there's like no way to dodge all this stuff, but you could do a ton of damage to it and just beat down this boss really quickly. And then that got patched out, and then there were like multiple versions of that same thing that happened with enraging 2 statues at the same time. Because what you can do on this boss, Illias isn't showing it off here, but you can actually equip Greed, the weapon that's a circle around your body, and you can just jump in between 2 statues, and you can hit both of them at the same time, which is what makes the speedrun strats for this boss much easier.
Yeah, one thing I like about that too is the visual, just the layout of this arena. The fact that each construct has the torches between them, because the torches are a nice visual cue for when I'm talking about the snake train. When the snake train goes by and it mirrors each time, so you just need to kind of line yourself up with either the middle pillar or one of the torches or something like that. The fact that there's these little things spread across the fight is a nice visual cue there. But then also, yeah, if you have Greed equipped and you want to be hitting 2 statues at once, the torch is a way to line yourself up with that too. So yeah, it's just really nice visual design, really well composed arena and stuff, with the negative and positive space, with the health bars on the bottom. It's great looking. Looks like Illias has forfeited at this point, though. The ancient constructs were too much. Too much! Like that Cake song, you know? Too much, too much, too much. You know the one I'm talking about.
I don't, but...
So it looks like Cake is going with a victory in round 1. Illias, unfortunately, got beat down by the ancient constructs, and this game just gives it to you sometimes. I mean, sometimes you start a run, and you just don't finish because one of these bosses, usually it's a boss, just gives you the business. So, good game to Illias, good game to you, Cake. Thank you for this race on this beautiful Sunday evening.
Yeah, and thanks for being here to commentate. Just want to mention, this game it's a difficult game. A lot of people forget that. Being at Ancient Constructs here at an hour and 15 minutes, that, if you compare that to a fast speedrun, that might seem really slow, but that's definitely not like slow at all. It's actually pretty dang fast. And I don't know how many completed playthroughs Illias has of this, how much he's practiced, but just that he had the guts to sign up for this tournament and to practice for it and go into it, knowing that it's probably going to be a rough road. Like, you got to give a shout out to Illias for that. That's really cool.
Right. Yep. I mean, it takes a lot of skill to be able to get to this section of the game this quickly. And I mean, just like Cake said, it doesn't look so much like that when you're literally side by side with the world record holder of this category. But it is a very, very difficult game and takes a lot of skill to do what we've seen here. So thanks everybody for putting this tournament together, for watching the tournament, and thanks to Speed Gaming for hosting it and all that. And I think that we are going to know when our next matches are going to be pretty soon here, because next we're getting the seeding of next round, which is next week right now. So new matches are going to be getting scheduled here, and we should have more of this wonderful game very soon. I see that we do already have a race scheduled for tomorrow. Tomorrow is Shark versus Frozen at 7 Eastern, and that is going to be a really, really good race. Shark and Frozen are 2 of the best players of this game. That should be a fantastic race, and I very much look forward to that. So stick around and watch that tomorrow. Remember to also follow our runners. You can follow me on commentary if you want. Also, it was CakeSauc3, one of the runners, who joined me on commentary for a little bit here. There you go.
Definitely follow Dash. Dash is awesome. Follow Dash. Follow Illias. Follow me, hopefully. And you guys all have a great day.
Yep. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.